All right, get ready. Because today we're diving deep into Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Oh, a classic.
You bet. You've shared some excerpts with me, and I think we're about to uncover some pure gold here when it comes to effectiveness and really building those rock-solid relationships. You ready for some aha moments?
Absolutely. Bring them on. Covey's work is so fascinating
Yeah.
because he goes way beyond, like, that surface level self-help stuff.
Yeah.
He really digs into, I think, the philosophy of what it means to be effective, not just in our own lives, but, how we connect with everyone around us.
I've always loved how he uses these pop culture references
Yeah.
to really make these points.
Yeah?
Like how he uses Star Wars to explain the importance of investing in relationships.
Yes.
We'll get to that later.
Okay.
But first, let's talk about one of Covey's most fundamental ideas, the difference between the character ethic and the personality ethic.
Oh, that's crucial. Such a crucial distinction.
Yeah.
So many self-help gurus focus on that personality ethic, the techniques, the skills, all those quick fixes. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone.
Right, exactly. Like trying to get a six-pack by just doing crunches, but ignoring your diet and your overall health.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Covey argues that true effectiveness really stems from the character ethic. It's a foundation that's built on principles like integrity, honesty, fairness. It's about who you are, not just what you do.
It's being, not just doing.
Yeah, that's it. Being, not just doing.
Okay. So imagine someone who's like super charismatic.
Okay.
They can charm anyone.
Right.
But they're not really sincere underneath it all. They might see like short-term success, but their relationships will probably just crumble eventually.
They will. They will.
That's the personality ethic in action.
Absolutely. And that's why so many people,
Yeah.
find themselves hitting a ceiling in their personal and professional lives. They've mastered all the techniques,
Right.
but they haven't developed the character
Right.
to actually support that long-term success.
Okay, so if someone is operating from a character ethic, though,
Okay.
what might that look like, in everyday life?
You would see someone whose actions consistently align with their values.
Okay.
They're dependable, they keep their promises, they treat people with respect. Even when it's hard, they may not be the flashiest person in the room, but they have that, quiet strength
Right.
that draws people to them.
They're the kind of person you want in your corner.
Exactly.
One you can always count on.
Exactly. And you know what? That inner strength actually allows them to be more successful in the long run
Okay.
because people trust them.
Yeah.
They're not worried about, like, hidden agendas or ulterior motives.
Right, right. There's no, like, facade.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so we've got this foundation of character. Now, Covey also talks about paradigms, basically like our mental maps
Our mental maps.
of the world. And he uses a great analogy
As he does.
to illustrate this.
Okay, I love this one.
So imagine you're in Chicago,
Right.
but you're using a map of Detroit to get around.
You're going to get lost.
You're going to be so lost.
Yeah.
You can put in all the effort you want,
Right.
but you're just going to end up lost and confused.
You're going the wrong direction.
Right. That's because you're operating from, like, the wrong mat, the
Yep.
wrong understanding of
well,
how things work.
Exactly. And so many of us are walking around with these, like, outdated or inaccurate paradigms that are holding us back.
Yeah. So the key is to recognize those, limiting paradigms and then shift them.
Yes.
But how do we even know if we're operating from, like, the wrong map in the first place?
That's where self-awareness comes in.
Okay.
Covey really emphasizes what he calls inside-out change, meaning, like, we need to start by examining our own beliefs and assumptions before we can effectively change anything else.
So it's not about, like, trying to change other people or our circumstances.
No.
It's about changing ourselves first.
It is. It's about taking responsibility for our own perceptions and reactions.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how all of this fits together.
Yeah.
This leads us to Covey's idea of the maturity continuum, this journey that we take from dependence to independence to interdependence.
Oh, I love that. Think of it like learning to ride a bike.
Okay.
At first, you're totally dependent on someone to
Right.
hold you up.
Yeah.
Then you gain independence. You can ride on your own.
You're free.
But the real magic happens when you start, like, riding with others.
Okay.
Maybe even, in a race where you're relying on each other and achieving something amazing together.
Working as a team.
Yeah. That's interdependence.
So we start life dependent, then we strive for independence. And then the ultimate level of effectiveness lies in mastering interdependence.
That's it. And this journey of moving from, like, you to I to we
I like that.
is woven throughout all the 7 habits.
Oh, okay.
We'll see how it all unfolds as we explore each habit in more detail.
All right. And speaking of interdependence, one of my favorite parts of Covey's book is this analogy of the emotional bank account.
Oh, such a good one.
Can you explain that one? How that works?
Okay, it's such a brilliant metaphor. Just like a financial bank account,
No.
our relationships actually have an emotional balance.
Okay.
We make deposits through actions that build trust and connection.
Okay.
And we make withdrawals through actions that kind of damage that trust.
So things like courtesy, kindness, keeping promises.
Those are all deposits.
Those are all deposits.
Yes, absolutely. And those deposits, what they do is they build this reserve of goodwill and trust that can really help us weather the inevitable challenges
Right.
that arise in any relationship.
Right. Because every relationship has challenges.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. And then on the flip side,
Yeah.
things like breaking promises, being disrespectful, or dismissing someone's feelings, those are withdrawals
Those are withdrawals.
that deplete the account.
Big time. And just like a financial bank account,
Yeah.
if we keep making those withdrawals
Yeah.
without enough deposits, we end up in overdraft and the relationship suffers.
That makes perfect sense. So building a strong emotional bank account is really crucial for creating those strong and resilient relationships.
It is.
Too.
It is. It creates this foundation of trust and security that allows us to navigate conflict effectively and deepen that connection with each other.
Okay, so we've talked about the character ethic, paradigms, the emotional bank account. Now, Covey uses another fantastic analogy
Oh, yeah.
to highlight the importance of nurturing relationships. The goose and the golden egg analogy.
Yes, a classic,
Yeah.
The goose represents the relationship, and the golden eggs represent those desired results
Right.
that we want from that relationship.
It's like focusing on the fruit of a tree without tending
Yes.
to its roots and its branches.
You got it.
You might get a few harvests, but eventually the tree is going to wither and die.
That's a great way to put it. Covey argues that we often get so focused on the golden eggs,
Yeah.
the results, that we neglect the goose, the relationship itself.
Right, yeah.
And that is a recipe for disaster.
So how might this play out in a real world scenario?
Okay.
Let's say in a work environment.
So imagine a manager who is obsessed with productivity,
Okay.
but they completely ignore the well-being of their team.
Right.
They might see some short-term gains, but eventually burnout kicks in, resentment kicks in, lack of trust,
Yeah.
leading to decreased performance and even higher turnover.
So they're killing the goose to get the golden eggs.
Exactly. And Covey illustrates this principle so beautifully with a story about his son.
Oh, I love this story.
His son was struggling in school,
Okay.
and they were trying all sorts of techniques to improve his grades. Nothing was working.
And then comes the Star Wars revelation, right?
Yes. Covey decided to, just spend some quality time with his son, taking him to see Star Wars.
Yeah.
And out of the blue, his son says, "Dad, you know why you don't like Star Wars? It's because you don't understand the philosophy and training of a Jedi Knight."
Wait, his son actually called him out
Called him out.
on not understanding Star Wars.
I know, it's amazing, right?
It's hilarious.
And what's even more remarkable is that Covey's son, who had been struggling in school, ends up teaching his dad
Wow.
about the principles of Star Wars and how they connect to the very things Covey taught in his books. It became this incredible moment of connection and shared learning.
Wow. So it's like the golden egg of understanding and connection emerged.
Yeah.
Because Covey invested in the goose.
Yes.
That relationship with his son.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this story perfectly illustrates how focusing on the PPC balance,
Okay.
nurturing the relationship, can lead to those unexpected breakthroughs in other areas of life.
So it's not just about, getting what we want from others. It's about building genuine connection and understanding.
Yes.
And sometimes that leads to the most surprising and rewarding outcomes.
It really does. And that's actually a perfect segue into Covey's principle of proactivity,
Okay.
where we take responsibility for our own choices and actions
Okay.
rather than being driven by external forces.
Okay, let's dive into that. Proactivity seems simple enough,
Yeah.
but I have a feeling Covey has some thought-provoking
Oh, he does.
insights on this.
You bet he does.
Yeah.
It's not just about like taking initiative. It's about a fundamental shift in mindset.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that we actually have the power to choose our response to any situation. We're not just, these pawns reacting to external forces.
I love that. It's like we're taking ownership of the steering wheel instead of letting life just kind of drive us wherever it wants.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Covey introduces this really cool concept of like the circles of concern and influence.
Okay.
The circle of concern encompasses, everything we care about.
Right.
But many of those things, they're outside of our direct control.
Right. Like the weather.
The weather, exactly.
The economy. What other people think of us.
Yes, all those things. But then there's the circle of influence.
Yeah. Okay.
And that includes the things we can directly control.
Okay.
Our own thoughts, our actions, our attitudes.
So reactive people tend to focus their energy on their circle of concern, worrying about all these things they can't change.
Yeah.
While proactive people focus on their circle of influence,
Yeah.
taking action on the things they can impact.
You got it. And what's really interesting is that as we focus on our circle of influence, it actually expands over time.
Okay.
So the more we take responsibility and make those proactive choices, the more power we have to really shape our lives and create positive change.
Okay, so instead of stressing out about all those things outside of my control,
Right.
I should focus on what I can do right here, right now.
You got it.
But how do I actually become more proactive?
One powerful strategy is to start paying attention to your language.
Okay.
Reactive people often use language that kind of removes their agency.
Okay.
Like, I have to, or they made me, or I can't.
Right, yeah.
So instead of saying, I have to go to work, a proactive person might say, I choose to go to work because it allows me to.
Yeah.
You see the difference.
That subtle shift in language
It's subtle but powerful.
really reflects a completely different mindset. You're acknowledging your choice and the reasons behind it.
It's powerful.
It's like taking back your power.
Yes.
Instead of feeling like a victim of circumstance, you're saying, I'm making this choice and I'm owning it.
It is. And that's incredibly empowering. Covey even suggests like a 30-day proactivity challenge.
Oh.
For 30 days, just focus solely on your circle of influence.
Okay.
Make small commitments and keep them.
Yeah.
Be a model, not a critic.
Okay.
Focus on being part of the solution, not the problem.
I love that challenge. It's a really concrete way to start putting proactivity into practice. It reminds me of the idea of making those small deposits into our emotional bank accounts.
It is, exactly.
It's those small, consistent actions that really add up over time to create a significant impact.
They do, absolutely. And speaking of consistent actions,
Yeah.
that brings us to those 7 habits themselves.
Okay, yes.
They provide a really practical framework, I think, for putting all of these principles into action and achieving true effectiveness.
Okay, I'm ready to unpack those habits.
Let's do it.
But before we do, you mentioned earlier that they follow a progression
They do.
from independence to interdependence.
Yes.
Can you remind me how that works?
Absolutely. Habits 1, 2, and 3,
Okay.
they focus on self-mastery
Okay.
and moving from that dependence to independence.
Okay.
These are what Covey calls the private victories,
Okay.
where we take responsibility for our own lives and choices.
So building that solid foundation
It's crucial.
of independence is essential
It is.
before we can really effectively move into interdependence.
You got it. Think of it like this. You can't build a strong, healthy relationship with someone else
Right.
if you haven't first developed a strong, healthy relationship with yourself.
Makes perfect sense.
Right.
So once we have that foundation of independence, then habits 4, 5, and 6, the public victory has come into play.
Exactly. Those habits, they're all about how we interact with others,
Okay.
how we build strong relationships, how we communicate effectively, and collaborate to achieve, amazing things together.
Okay, so let's dive into those public victories, starting with habit 4.
Okay.
Think win-win. Now, I think most people have heard this phrase before, but what does it actually mean in practice?
It's more than just like a negotiation tactic.
Right.
It's really a philosophy of approaching, I think, all of our interactions with the belief that there's a solution out there that benefits everyone involved.
Okay.
It's about shifting from like a me versus you mentality to a we mentality.
But isn't it kind of naive to think that, like, everyone can win in every situation?
Yeah.
What about, like, those times when there's a clear conflict of interest?
That's where it gets really interesting, right?
Yeah.
Covey acknowledges that not every situation is a win-win.
Okay.
But he argues that we should always strive for win-win,
Okay.
to approach every interaction with that belief that a mutually beneficial solution is possible.
So it's about changing our default setting
Yes.
from competition to collaboration.
Exactly. And to set the stage for thinking win-win, Covey introduces what he calls the 6 paradigms of human interaction.
Okay.
Basically, it's like ways that people typically approach negotiations and relationships.
Okay, let's hear about these paradigms. I'm
Yeah.
curious to see where I fall on this spectrum.
So the first one, and most ideal, is win-win,
Okay.
where both parties feel good about the decision and are committed to the outcome.
Right.
Then you've got win-lose, which is like that classic competitive approach. If I win, you lose.
Okay.
Then we have lose-win, where one person sacrifices their own needs to please others or avoid conflict.
Okay, so those are pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
What about the other 3?
We've got lose-lose, where both parties end up losing, often out of spite or revenge.
Oof, yeah.
Then there's simply win, where one person gets what they want without considering the needs of others.
Right.
And finally, there's win-win or no deal.
Ooh, that one's intriguing. What does it mean to have no deal as an option?
It means recognizing that sometimes, despite our best efforts,
Yeah.
we're not going to be able to reach an agreement that truly benefits everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And in those cases, it's better to walk away
Okay.
than to force a compromise
Yeah.
that leaves both parties feeling, resentful or unfulfilled.
That's a powerful concept. So it's not about, like, always getting our way.
No.
It's about finding solutions that really work for everyone involved.
Exactly.
And if we can't find that solution,
Yeah.
it's okay to walk away.
It's okay to walk away. And Covey really emphasizes that achieving win-win requires more than just techniques.
Okay.
It requires like a shift in character and mindset.
So what are the key ingredients
Yeah.
for cultivating this win-win mindset?
Covey highlights 3 essential character traits: integrity, maturity, and what he calls an abundance mentality.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's break those down.
Okay, so integrity is about aligning our actions with our values, keeping our commitments, being honest and transparent in our dealings with others.
So without integrity, win-win just becomes like a manipulation tactic.
Exactly. People can sense when someone isn't genuine,
Right,
and that really undermines trust.
right. Okay, so integrity is key. What about maturity?
Yeah.
How does that play into win-win?
Maturity is about finding that sweet spot between courage and consideration.
Okay.
It's having the courage to express our own needs and convictions,
Okay.
but also being considerate of the needs and perspectives of others.
So it's being assertive without being aggressive
You got
and empathetic without being a pushover.
You got it. And finally, there's the abundance mentality,
Okay.
which is this belief that there's enough out there for everyone.
Okay.
It's the opposite of what he calls the scarcity mentality,
Right.
which sees life as this zero-sum game,
Right.
where one person's gain is another person's loss.
Yeah. I love the abundance mentality. So someone with an abundance mentality would genuinely celebrate the successes of others, seeing it as like an opportunity for collaboration and growth, rather than a threat to their own success.
Exactly. And they'd be more inclined, I think, to share credit, resources, opportunities, believing that everyone can benefit from this collaborative approach.
Okay, so we've got integrity, maturity, and this abundance mentality is the foundation for thinking win-win.
Yeah.
But how do we actually put this into practice?
Right.
It can't be as simple as just saying, I want a win-win situation.
You're right. It takes more than just good intentions.
Right.
Covey suggests focusing on 4 key elements: relationships, agreements, systems, and processes.
Okay, let's break those down, starting with relationships.
Yeah.
How do they play a role in creating win-win solutions?
Well, as we discussed earlier, trust is absolutely essential for win-win. If there's no trust, people are going to be guarded, suspicious, and less likely to collaborate openly.
So those deposits into the emotional bank account are crucial
They are.
for building that foundation of trust needed for win-win.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When there's a high level of trust, communication is easier, people are more willing to be vulnerable, and we can really focus on solving the problem at hand rather than getting bogged down in personal conflicts.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. What about agreements?
Yeah.
How do they contribute to win-win?
What Covey calls win-win agreements, they provide clear expectations and guidelines for achieving those mutually beneficial outcomes.
Okay.
And instead of focusing on specific methods, they focus on results,
Okay.
giving people the freedom to be creative and innovative in how they achieve those results.
So it's about setting clear goals
Yes.
and allowing people the autonomy to figure out the best way to get
Exactly.
there.
Exactly. And that level of autonomy, it can be incredibly motivating.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
people are more likely to be committed to an outcome
Yeah.
when they feel a sense of ownership in how it's achieved.
Okay. So we've got relationships and agreements.
Mm-hmm.
What about systems?
Systems can either support or undermine win-win.
Okay.
If the reward systems in an organization are based on, individual competition, for example,
Yeah.
it's going to be very difficult
It's not going to work.
to create that win-win culture.
So it's about aligning incentives
Yes.
with that desired outcome of collaboration and mutual benefit.
Exactly. If you want people to work together,
Right.
you need to reward them for working together.
Okay. And finally, we have processes. How do they fit into this win-win framework?
Processes are the steps we take to actually reach those win-win solutions.
Okay.
And Covey emphasizes the importance of, seeking first to understand, then to be understood, which is habit 5.
Ah, yes. Empathic listening.
Exactly.
So we've come full circle. Win-win requires that deep listening and understanding.
Precisely. We need to truly understand the other person's perspective, their needs, their concerns, before we can effectively communicate our needs
Right.
and find that solution that works for everyone.
It sounds like win-win is so much more than just a negotiation technique.
It is.
It's a way of life, a way of approaching
Exactly.
all our interactions with this spirit of collaboration and mutual benefit.
That's a great way to put it. It's about shifting our paradigm from, competition to collaboration, from scarcity to abundance, and from, transactional to transformational interactions.
Okay, I'm really getting a feel for the depth
Yeah.
of Covey's thinking here. He's not just giving us tips and tricks. He's challenging us to fundamentally change the way we approach relationships and interactions.
And that brings us to habit 5.
Okay.
Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Yeah.
As we were just discussing,
Yeah.
this is the cornerstone of creating those win-win solutions.
Right.
It's about truly listening to and empathizing with others
Yeah.
before trying to make them understand our point of view.
This one really resonates with me.
Yeah.
I think we all have a tendency to just kind of jump in with our own opinions and solutions
Yes.
before we've really taken the time
Yes,
to listen to what the other person is saying.
absolutely. And Covey uses this really powerful image to illustrate this.
Okay.
It's the optical illusion of the young woman and the old woman.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You can look at the same image and see two completely different things
Yeah.
depending on your perspective.
Yeah. That's such a great, visual representation
It is.
of how our paradigms, our
Yeah.
mental maps
Yeah.
shape our perceptions.
Exactly. And until we understand the other person's paradigm, their way of seeing the world,
Right.
we can't effectively communicate with them or find solutions that truly address their needs.
So how do we actually, practice
Right.
empathic listening? What does that look like? Right.
In real life.
It starts with a genuine desire to understand the other person's point of view.
Okay.
We need to listen with our ears,
Right.
our eyes, and our hearts.
So it's about being fully present,
Yes.
paying attention not just to the words they're saying,
Right.
but also their tone of voice,
Yeah.
their body language,
Yes.
their,
Yeah.
their emotions.
Precisely. And about listening with the intent to understand, not just to reply.
Oh, yeah.
So often we're just waiting for our turn to speak,
Right.
formulating our response in our heads instead of truly absorbing what the other person is trying to convey.
Yeah. We're so focused on, getting our point across
Yeah.
that we forget to actually listen first.
Yes.
And that can lead to all sorts of miscommunications
Oh, yeah.
and conflicts.
Absolutely. So empathic listening, it requires us to put aside our own agenda for a moment and step into the other person's shoes.
Okay.
It's about asking clarifying questions, right?
Reflecting back what we hear to make sure we understand correctly and validating their feelings, even if we don't agree with their perspective.
It sounds like a real skill.
It
It's
is.
something that takes practice and intention to develop.
It does. But the rewards are immense.
Okay.
When we feel truly heard and understood,
Yeah.
it builds trust, it deepens connection,
Right.
and it paves the way for finding those mutually beneficial solutions.
It's like that saying, people don't care how much you know
Yes.
until they know how much you care.
Exactly. Empathy, it's the foundation
Yeah.
of any strong relationship, whether it's personal or professional.
Okay, so empathic listening, seeking first to understand
Yes.
is essential for creating win-win solutions and building those strong relationships.
Absolutely.
Now, how does Habit 6 Synergize build on this foundation?
Synergize is all about, I think, the power of creative cooperation.
Okay.
It's this principle that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Right.
When people work together synergistically, they generate these ideas and solutions that no one individual could have come up with on their own.
I love that. It's like that saying, 2 heads are better than 1.
Yes.
But in this case, it's more like 2 heads working together creatively can create something truly extraordinary.
Exactly. Covey uses a great example to illustrate this.
Okay.
It's his husband and wife
Okay.
who are trying to plan a vacation.
Okay. Relatable.
The husband wants to go fishing in like this remote, secluded area.
Right.
The wife wants to visit her mother, who lives in the city.
Okay, so very different ideas of a vacation.
Very different. At first, it seems like, an either situation.
Yeah.
Someone has to compromise.
Right.
But when they approach the problem synergistically, seeking to understand each other's needs and desires, they come up with a solution that satisfies both of them.
So maybe they find like a great fishing spot near the city.
Right.
Or they split the vacation, spending part of it fishing, part of it with her mother.
Yeah, or maybe they come up with something even more creative that neither of them had even considered before.
Exactly. So synergy is all about valuing differences.
Valuing differences, yes.
And leveraging those differences to create something new and better. It's about recognizing that 1 + 1 can equal 3 or even more.
Or even more, exactly. So how do we foster this kind of synergy?
Yeah, that's a great question.
In our own lives? What are the key ingredients? Well, first and foremost, it requires that win-win mindset.
Okay.
If people are coming from a win-lose or lose-win perspective, they're not going to be open to those truly collaborative solutions.
So we need that foundation of trust and mutual respect.
That we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. And then it's about creating, I think, a safe space for open and honest communication. Okay.
People need to feel comfortable sharing their ideas, even if they're different or unconventional.
It's about encouraging, like brainstorming, right? Where there's no judgment and all ideas are welcome.
Exactly. And it's about being willing to challenge our own assumptions and be open to new perspectives.
It's like embracing that beginner's mind.
Yeah.
That sense of curiosity and wonder rather than just clinging to our own like fixed ideas.
Exactly. Synergy requires humility, that recognition that we don't have all the answers and that others may have insights that we don't.
So it's a process of like co-creation.
It is,
of building on each other's ideas to come up with something truly innovative and effective.
Exactly. And Covey also talks about negative synergy.
Okay.
Where the interaction actually diminishes the individual contributions.
So instead of 1 + 1 equaling 3, it's more like 1 + 1 equaling 1 or even less.
Or even less,
Oh, no. So how do we avoid falling into that trap of negative synergy?
It comes back, I think, to those principles we've been discussing.
Okay.
Having a win-win mindset, seeking first to understand, valuing differences, and creating that safe space for open and honest communication.
It's about being mindful of the energy.
Yeah, the energy we bring.
That we bring to our interactions and making that conscious choice to really collaborate rather than compete.
Exactly. And when we do that, the results can be truly remarkable.
Okay, so we've covered habits 4, 5, and 6. Think win-win. Seek first to understand and synergize. And these habits are all about achieving that effective interdependence in our interactions with others. Now, how does habit 7, sharpen the saw, tie into this framework?
Habit 7 is all about renewing ourselves in all 4 dimensions of our nature: physical, spiritual, mental, and social emotional.
Right. And we talked about this a little bit earlier.
We did.
It's about taking care of ourselves so that we can really show up as our best selves in all aspects of our lives.
Exactly. And Covey emphasizes that sharpening the saw is not just about like self-care. It's also about self-renewal.
Okay.
about continuously growing and expanding our capacities in all 4 dimensions.
He uses the analogy of like an athlete training for a competition, right?
Exactly, yes.
We need to train our physical, spiritual, mental, and social emotional muscles
Yes,
to achieve that peak performance.
that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And Covey suggests dedicating at least 1 hour each day
Wow.
to renewing ourselves in these 4 dimensions.
So what are some like practical examples
Okay, yeah.
of activities that would fall under each dimension?
Physically, it could be anything from, going for a run to getting a massage
Mm-hmm.
to simply taking a walk in nature.
Right.
Spiritually, it might be meditating, praying,
Mm-hmm.
or spending time reflecting on our values and purpose.
Right.
Mentally,
Okay.
it could involve reading, taking a class,
Yeah.
or engaging in thought-provoking conversations.
Okay.
And then social-emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
it might be connecting with loved ones,
Right.
volunteering in our community,
Yeah.
or simply practicing acts of kindness.
So it's about making a conscious effort
It is.
to really nourish ourselves
Yes.
on all levels.
Exactly. And when we do that, we create this positive feedback loop.
Okay.
As we become more balanced and fulfilled in our own lives,
Yeah.
we're naturally more effective
Mhm.
and compassionate
Yeah.
in our interactions with others.
Right.
And that, in turn, strengthens our relationships
Mm-hmm.
and creates a ripple effect
Yeah.
of positive change
Mhm.
in the world.
So it's not just about achieving like personal success.
No, it's not.
It's about creating a better world
Yeah.
for everyone.
That's the beauty of Covey's 7 habits, I think.
Yeah.
They provide this roadmap for living a life, I think, of purpose, meaning, and contribution.
I love that. Okay, so we've explored all 7 habits. I'm seeing how they all interconnect and build on each other,
Right.
really creating this powerful framework
Yeah.
for personal and interpersonal effectiveness. But I'm wondering, how do we actually implement these
Right.
habits into our daily lives? It seems
Yeah.
like a lot to take on.
It can feel overwhelming, right? But, Covey emphasizes that it's a process, not an event.
Okay.
It's about making small, incremental changes over time,
Right.
focusing on one habit at a time and being patient with ourselves.
So it's not about trying to do everything at once. It's about taking those small, consistent steps
Yeah.
in the right direction.
Exactly. And he also
Yeah.
talks about the importance of,
Yeah. Beginning with the end in mind, which is habit 2.
right, that's about defining our values and goals
Yes.
and really creating that vision
Yeah.
for the life we want to create.
Okay, so we spent parts 1 and 2 really breaking down like the foundation of Covey's 7 habits. We've talked about character, paradigms, the power of being proactive
Right.
and making those crucial deposits in our emotional bank accounts.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm ready to hear how we can actually start putting all of this into practice in our lives, like in a really tangible way.
That's a great point. It can feel, a little overwhelming
Yeah.
to try and implement all 7 habits at once.
Right.
It's a journey, not a race.
Right.
Covey emphasizes that, it's about progress, not perfection.
Okay. That's reassuring. So where would you suggest someone start if they are new to this whole framework?
I would say start with habit 1, be proactive.
Okay.
This is where we really shift from that reactive mindset to a proactive one.
We talked about that earlier. It's about focusing on our circle of influence,
Yeah.
the things we can control,
Exactly.
rather than dwelling on our circle of concern, those things that, are outside of our control.
You got it. And one powerful way to actually become more proactive is to start paying attention to your language.
Okay.
So instead of saying, I have to go to work,
Right.
try saying, I choose to go to work because it allows me to.
That's a really subtle shift in language, but it really changes the whole feeling, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
It's like going from feeling trapped to feeling empowered.
Exactly. And another really practical tip for habit 1, just start identifying those moments where you tend to react, impulsively or negatively.
Okay, like getting frustrated in traffic.
Yeah.
Or snapping at someone when you're stressed.
Exactly. Once you've kind of identified those triggers,
Right.
you can then start to proactively choose a different response.
Okay.
When you take a few deep breaths or you just, remind yourself of the bigger picture.
So it's about creating a little space between that stimulus and the response.
Yes.
So that we can choose a more thoughtful
Yeah.
and effective way to react.
You got it. Now, once you've, started to cultivate that more proactive mindset,
Okay.
habit 2, begin with the end in mind,
Yeah.
comes into play.
Okay. This is where we define our values, our goals, and create that vision for the
Yes.
life that we really want.
Exactly. And a powerful tool for clarifying our values and goals. Try writing a personal mission statement.
Oh, wait. You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
It's like a guiding document for our lives.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's a way to articulate our core values, our deepest aspirations,
Okay.
and the kind of impact that we want to make in the world.
Yeah.
And Covey suggests a process of, deep reflection, brainstorming, and refining
Yeah.
to create a mission statement that truly resonates with our authentic selves.
I love that. It's about getting really clear on what matters most to us.
Yeah.
And then using that clarity like as a compass to guide our decisions and our actions going forward.
You got it. And once we have that really clear sense of purpose,
Yeah.
then we can move on to habit 3. Put first things first.
Okay.
This is where we prioritize our time and energy to align with our values and goals.
So it's about making sure our actions are congruent with our mission statement,
Yes.
with our vision for our life.
Exactly. And a really helpful tool for putting first things first, try using a time management matrix
Okay.
that categorizes tasks based on their urgency and their importance.
So we focus on those tasks that are both important and urgent, but we also make time for those tasks that are important but not urgent.
Exactly.
It's those ones that often get neglected,
You do.
but they're so crucial for long-term success and fulfillment.
They are things like planning, relationship building, self-care.
Right.
Those are those quadrant 2 activities that we often put off.
Yeah.
But they're really the foundation
Yeah, they are.
for a truly effective
Yeah.
and meaningful life.
Okay, so we've got the first 3 habits. Be proactive, begin with the end in mind, and put first things first, laying that foundation for a life of purpose and intentionality. Now, how do the next 3 habits, those public victories,
Yeah.
build on this foundation?
Habits 4, 5, and 6. Think win-win, seek first to understand, and synergize are all about taking those principles of effectiveness that we've been talking about and applying them to our interactions with other people.
Right. These are the habits that help us really create strong, healthy, mutually beneficial relationships.
Exactly. And as we discussed earlier, habit 4, think win-win, is about approaching all of our interactions with that belief that there is a solution out there that benefits everyone involved.
It's about shifting from that scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset.
Yes.
Believing there's enough for everyone to succeed.
Exactly. And it requires cultivating those, key character traits, integrity, maturity,
Yeah.
and that abundance mentality.
Right, right. And once we have that win-win mindset in place, we can move on to habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Yes.
Which is all about that empathic listening.
Empathic listening, yes. This habit is really about truly understanding the other person's perspective.
Right.
Before trying to make them understand ours.
Right.
It's about putting aside our own agenda,
Yeah.
even if it's just for a moment, and really listening with our hearts, not just our ears.
Yeah. And as we discussed, that requires asking those clarifying questions.
And reflected.
Reflecting back what we hear to make sure we understand correctly.
Yes.
And really validating the other person's feelings, even if we don't necessarily agree.
Even if you don't agree, yeah.
With their perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when we practice empathic listening, we create a space for genuine connection, and understanding, which lays the foundation for finding those, mutually beneficial solutions.
Right, right. And finally, habit 6, synergize. This builds on that foundation of understanding.
It does.
And collaboration.
This is where we leverage the power of differences,
Right.
recognizing that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Right. It's about embracing those aha moments where we realize 1 + 1 can equal 3
Yes.
or even more.
Exactly. And synergy requires creating that safe space for open and honest communication.
Right.
Where people feel, comfortable sharing their ideas and perspectives without fear of judgment.
It's about brainstorming,
Yes.
challenging assumptions, and being open to those new possibilities.
Precisely. And when we embrace synergy, we really unlock a level of creativity and innovation that's just not possible when we're working in isolation.
Okay, so we've covered the first 6 habits.
Yeah.
Now, how does habit 7, sharpen the saw, tie into this whole framework of effectiveness
Yes.
and interdependence?
Habit 7 is all about renewing ourselves in all 4 dimensions of our nature: physical, spiritual, mental, and social emotional.
Right. we touched upon this earlier, taking care of ourselves.
Yes.
So we can really show up as our best selves.
Yes,
In
exactly.
all areas of life.
And Covey emphasizes that sharpening the saw is not just about, like, self-care.
Okay.
It's also about self-renewal,
Okay.
about continuously growing and expanding our capacities in all 4 dimensions.
He uses that analogy like, an athlete training for a competition.
Exactly.
Right. We need to train our physical, spiritual, mental, and social emotional muscles
You do.
to really achieve that peak performance.
That's a great analogy. And Covey actually suggests that we dedicate at least 1 hour every single day
Oh, okay.
to renewing ourselves in these 4 dimensions.
So what are some practical examples of
Yeah.
activities that would fall under each
Sure.
dimension?
Physically, it could be anything from going for a run, getting a massage,
Okay.
even just taking a walk in nature.
Right.
Spiritually, it might be meditating, praying,
Okay.
spending time reflecting on our values and our purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Mentally,
Okay.
it could involve reading, taking a class, engaging in those thought-provoking conversations.
Yeah.
And social emotionally, it might be connecting with loved ones, volunteering in our community, or just practicing those, simple acts of kindness.
It's about making that conscious effort to really nourish ourselves on all those different levels.
Exactly.
Oh,
And when we do that, we create this positive feedback loop.
Okay.
As we become more balanced and fulfilled in our own lives, we're naturally more effective and compassionate
Yeah.
in our interactions with others.
Yeah.
And that, in turn, strengthens our relationships.
Right.
And really creates like a ripple effect
Yeah.
of positive change in the world around us.
So it's not just about achieving that, personal success.
It's not.
It's about creating a better world for everyone.
Exactly. That's the beauty, I think, of Covey's 7 habits.
Yeah.
They provide this roadmap for living a life, I think, of purpose, meaning, and contribution.
I love that. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the 7 habits of highly effective people, what are some key takeaways you want our listeners to really remember?
I hope they walk away with a sense of empowerment, recognizing that they really do have the power to choose their response to any situation, to create the life that they want.
It's about shifting from that reactive mindset to that proactive mindset.
Yes.
From a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset.
Right.
And from a me mentality to a we mentality.
You got it.
Yeah.
And I hope they see that effectiveness is not about like quick fixes or techniques. It's about fundamental shift in our mindset and our habits. It's about building a strong foundation.
Yeah.
Based on principles like integrity, responsibility, and mutual respect.
It really is a journey of continuous improvement, of, striving to live in greater alignment with our values each and every day.
Exactly. And it's a journey that is filled with incredible rewards, deeper relationships, greater fulfillment, profound sense of purpose.
Well said. Well, as we close out this episode, I want to leave our listeners with one thing to think about.
Okay.
Think about one relationship in your life that you'd like to strengthen.
Okay.
What's one small deposit you could make into that emotional bank account today?
That's a great question to think about. Maybe it's sending a heartfelt text message, offering a listening ear, or simply expressing your appreciation. Remember, it's those small, consistent actions that make the biggest difference over time.
I love that. And hey, if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and you want to explore some more specific strategies from Stephen Covey's book, let us know. We're always here to guide you on that journey to becoming more effective and fulfilled. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.